Everyone, welcome Julian, and his topic is going to be on Cosmos DB. It's a very interesting topic, so I'm really looking forward for this one. So everyone, welcome Julian. It's all yours.
Thank you. So basically, I'm going to talk about how we can use Cosmos DB data directly within the Power Platform to read and write data. So I'm going to show you how we can link and make available Cosmos DB data to app makers. And before I get going, this is me. Thank you for the introductions. I've been involved in Dynamics CRM since it first came out, but really I now focus on Power Platform and Azure. I'm an Azure Power Platform solution architect. I do a bit of Dynamics as well, but most of the solutions I do involve Power Platform and Azure solutions, especially around AI and IoT. I spend actually I'm doing a lot of my time training right now, but I'm also a business applications MVP. I speak at lots of events, including this one and other events. And I've got a book there, and I've got another book coming out next month on AI fundamentals, so the AI 900 exam, which I think is really interesting. If you're everybody should get into AI. Anyway, the purpose of this session today, is really to understand what we mean by Cosmos DB. I'm going to explain what Cosmos DB is and why it's important. And then how we can use it with the Power Platform. We've got a couple of options. We've got a connector that we can use, and we've also got these virtual tables. So I'll go through what's involved. I'll go through how we set it all up so you can understand how we can use it. Sorry. So let's start with what is Cosmos DB. And before I actually go into talking about Cosmos DB itself, I'm going to talk about why we need a different database. So we'll look at the different types of data concepts, what we mean by non-relational data, and then we'll look at what Cosmos DB can do and some of its benefits and the sort of places, the scenarios where you might use it, or you might find your customers using it, or use it in your solutions. So first we're going to discuss data concepts. And I've stole this slide because I think it's really good. We have really three types of data. And you need to understand the different types of data and where we use them. So structured data. Structured data adheres to a database schema. So we have rows of data, and each column in every row has the same data type. It has the same range of values. And this is what, if you do Dataverse tables, that's a structured table. It's what we call relational databases, where everything links. It's nice and atomic. Where every bit of data is related to each other. It handles, makes sure it's, the data integrity is maintained by the data store itself. I mean, structured data can just be an Excel spreadsheet with a table in it. It's typically tables of data where every column has the same values in each column. I think that's the really key thing. Then we've got unstructured data. So unstructured data is videos, images, it's text documents, it's Word documents where it's unstructured and you really can't use them programmatically. They're there consumed by us as humans. And then we've got this thing in the middle called semi-structured. Now, semi-structured is data that doesn't neatly fit into table rows and columns. Each record, they tend to use the word document rather than record, can have different fields in, different data types even. If we have a look at the example here, we'll see in a second. Actually, let's go to the next slide. You see, look at this example here. We've got two customer documents. One's got a name, the other's got a title and name. The other's got telephones, which got home and mobile. The other's got home, business and sell. Then the addresses are slightly different. So those similar sorts of data, we get differences within each document. The data in a non-relational data store doesn't follow the rules of relational stores, so everything has to be the same. We don't. Now, why has this come about? Well, we've got a lot of scenarios where data doesn't always fit each time, and it's when you get into relational databases like Azure SQL and Dataverse to a large extent, you end up having. It's quite hard to make changes. And you can't handle differences or variations very easily. And a lot of modern application development has said, okay, it's really hard for us to manage our applications. So rather than have our databases, which really contain the structure, the schema, and the rules for the data, we're going to put it into the application, those rules and how it works. So let the application work out what it wants to do and save it in a way that it makes it easily returnable. And this is what non-relational, semi-structured, or data, or also known as NoSQL databases try to do. So it has a slightly different non-tabular schema. And what you get is in the record, you actually get a label which says what it's for. So you see here we've got the telephone numbers. We don't just have a field called or column called home number, column called business number. We have telephone, and then we have tags. So, oh, this is the home number, this is the business number, this is the cell number. So it's very flexible, whether we don't know what the data is. And we can, the modern non-relational databases we can query this, even though it's not got this nice relational system. We've grown up running SQL queries that Mark and Matt showed earlier, which was a really good session. We can still query this with a non-relational database. The advantage really of non-relational is that it's fast. It allows you, because if you create a record in a relational database like SQL Server or Dataverse, when you create a record, say it's all related to this record, the database has to check it. We talk about relational databases being ACID, where they're atomic, consistent. I can't remember all the rest of the ACID terms, but it spends a fair amount of time. There's a database server has to do a lot of processing to validate that data fits the schema. If it's saying it's related to another record, that record actually exists. So we talk about relational databases being expensive, but they're very good for querying, but they're not so good for fast throughput. Okay, so non-relational sort of adopted this. So you find modern high-scale applications where they're using lots of data, they tend to use these non-relational data stores. And I think, again, we looked earlier on at Azure, so Azure Data Lake is storing data. Yes, you can do it, and you've got a little bit of querying on it, but it isn't great. And it doesn't always perform as fast. So non-relational database sort of sit below, sit above, say, here's just dump the data into a data lake, and between relational database, and allow us to have the sort of the best of the both worlds. We get high performance, high volume data. We're talking about millions of rows of records, or even tens of millions, hundreds of millions of rows of or documents rather. It uses partitioning schemes to separate out for performance. So we've seen a massive growth within a lot of organizations about using non-relational data stores rather than relational databases. So you'll find organizations using this and applications starting to use this. So Cosmos DB is Azure's or Microsoft's NoSQL database system. So it's a data store for storing these non-relational data. What it does, you create databases within Cosmos DB, just like you create in the SQL Server. And rather than creating tables, you create a document or partitions where you store your data, partition sets of documents. And Cosmos DB is really quick. It's also highly scalable. It's also the only Azure service that is a 5 nines availability. Microsoft referred to it as a planetary wide database, because what it does is it copies the data, it replicates the data around all the regions in the world. And you have a bit of control of that when you're writing records. You can say, okay, we talk about writing to Cosmos DB, and it may be being eventually consistent. So it doesn't have to be write it and then it's being consistent all the way around the world. So what you can sometimes get, and you may see this if you use Twitter, you can go and tweet something, and then you retrieve and look at your tweets, it's not there. That's a feature of something like Cosmos DB, where we're not making it consistent, but within a few seconds it will be there, and you refresh, oh, you'll see your tweet. That's the sort of thing you get with Cosmos DB. And other services, you can say I want it to be unique. You can say I want it to be unique and consistent all around the world, but it's going to take longer to save. So Cosmos DB is really the sort of a way to handle the issue where you have relational database with very rigid structures, which often lead to poor performance, and you often have to employ DBAs to manage it. And this is what Cosmos DB is trying to get around, and also it allows you to do a number of different ways of approaching things. Typically, we store our data in Cosmos DB as JSON objects. So we'll have a look how it looks in a minute. So I didn't start my timer, so let's do that. Okay, so what are some of its benefits? As I say, it's a globally available database. It is incredibly quick. It's always on. You don't have to worry about scalability on it. You basically pay for your transactions. And it's very cheap as well compared to SQL Server. I think it guarantees less than 10 milliseconds latency for index reads. It's really, really quick. And it's got a lot, and it also takes some of the management away from it. It automatically indexes all data for you. And it doesn't really worry about the scheme, it just does it. So here's some of the, I love this slide, just talks about the different things that we have available for it. Cosmos DB can support a number of different types of non-relational data, such as documents or column families, key value pairs, also supports like graph type databases as well. And it supports a number of different APIs. Oh, sorry, I zoomed on too far then, zoomed on too. Has a number of different APIs. So if you're coming from, say, Cassandra DB or MongoDB or Gremlin, we can migrate into Cosmos DB. So it supports a number of different APIs. The one we're going to use today is the SQL API, which really means we can write SQL-like queries to support this. And actually, it's the default now for Cosmos DB. The others are really there for if you're migrating from other data stores and you just want to use Cosmos DB for those. It used to be called Document DB, Cosmos DB. They've renamed it to Cosmos DB to say it's interplanetary consistent database. I think it's really useful. It's very, very fast. It's very easy to use, and we'll have a look at it in a minute. But if we're going to be doing it with the Power Platform, we need to choose the SQL API, and you do that when you build it. And I'm going to go through that step in a minute, how we actually create a Cosmos DB. You're welcome to ask any questions in the chat on this. But let me, or wait till the end. I'll hopefully have some time at the end, so I don't think I'm going to use all my time. So some of the use cases for Cosmos DB. So let's look at IoT. IoT devices, these are really classic. Each device will generate lots of telemetry. And I see this all the time where even I've got IoT devices that capture temperature and humidity, say. Sometimes the labels on the IoT devices typically send you JSON data. But sometimes the labels, sometimes they're temp, sometimes they're temperature, sometimes they're kept with a capital T. And all of these things, this is why relational database works. I can just store the data and then sort out and query it later on using those relevant tags. I know what temperature might have lots and lots of different tags. Or maybe one device, different devices may store maybe a slightly different JSON structure within each message. So this is why Cosmos DB allows us to store it and then work out what we're going to do later on. We also see it in retail because maybe I've got things being purchased across e-commerce sites, also multiple on-premises locations. And I can store all the data very quickly from lots of different types of things you purchase. I don't know if you ever looked at, say, supply chain management in finance and operations. You got hundreds of tables. I think there's like 25,000 tables, and that's what you get when you use a relational database for highly complex data structures to cope with all the scenarios. And I think something like retail, we've got lots of different products with lots of different, we sell basically food and clothing and electronics. They've got so many different properties. Something like a no relational database, a NoSQL database allows you to do it. And it's also fast. You do a lot of transactions, especially at sites. Think about something like marketing, where you've got emails being sent out and you're tracking clicks and opens. That sort of information. Again, you want to be able to store it quickly. You don't care about it being consistent, which you would if you were storing a SQL database. You want to store it fast and then analyze it later on. And Cosmos DB allows you to use it with other services, just as we talked about Synapse Analytics. It can access this data and analyze it. And gaming, things like you're using something like Xbox and you're on the gaming. Think about how many people are gaming at any one time. All your stats are constantly being updated, your point scores into the leaderboards. Or do that. You need to do it at very low latency. It needs to be really, really quick. And we've seen a lot of growth, especially Cosmos DB, where people need web applications or mobile applications for storing data quickly and be able to then analyze and show information back, process it quickly at huge volumes of data and process it back. So you see both the web and the mobile, they get that same thing, that usage telemetry, lots of little messages. We just need to store and then analyze later on. Okay. So, and before I go any further, I don't know if you're aware, Cosmos DB is actually used already in Dataverse. Dataverse is no longer just a SQL Server underneath. It uses SQL Server Elastic Pools. It uses Azure Blob storage, probably for audit logs. Uses Cosmos DB for its audit data and the mobile offline data sync to work out what data. Does anybody here use the offline sync to mobiles? It's effectively storing all the data changes into Cosmos DB, when that then synchronizes down to the mobile client. And if you use Customer Insights, which I love, the unified profile, so the processing there is all stored and handled in Cosmos DB. So it's already being used behind the scenes. You can't see it and touch it, just like it's handling there. But say Dynamics Marketing uses it as well for capturing its processing. So what's involved in creating a Cosmos DB database? First thing I'm going to point out, there is a free tier of Cosmos DB. You can add one free Cosmos DB account per Azure subscription, and it's enough to do development and testing on. You can do quite a lot for free on Azure. So this is a relatively recent change. So you go into your Azure portal. In fact, actually, it's probably one of the, on mine, it was on my, when I had to create a resource, it's listed there. It's like right at the bottom. It's one of the main services. You can just go and click and create, or you can just search for it if it doesn't appear in your list. Click on create. And this is where you actually have to go and select your API. So it defaults to the core or SQL option. We've got these other ones as well. Typically, this is where most people use Cosmos DB. So you select that, and then you just go through the main thing. You choose your Azure subscription. You have a resource group, just like every other Azure resource. It has to be in there. We give it a name. It has to be a unique name. So mine was Dataverse Summit 01 when I did this, to create it unique, because it forms part of the URL. Which location. And then we get this a free tier. So if you've not done Cosmos DB in your subscription, you can apply the free tier discount. And I think it likes that. And it takes about somewhere between 2 and 5 minutes to create, which is why I've done the screenshots, because it gets really boring, me just sat here waiting for something to happen. And actually, I had it yesterday when I actually set this demo up. The first time it errored, and I don't know why. I retried it, it worked. So then I've got my start. I can quickly just go and create a container for within my database. You have a database and a container within my database. It says, yeah, up to 400 units per second output. So that's up to 400 reads per second. That's the free version. So you're never going to hit it if you're just playing around with it. You've also got the ability to go and, once you've created your items container, download a sample application, which is a console app that basically simulates creating, retrieving, and updating. Well, actually, it doesn't simulate. It actually creates, updates, retrieves, and deletes documents within your container. So you can download that sample if you want. And then there's a thing called the Data Explorer, which just opens up in the portal and allows me to go query the record. So this is what we get. I've actually installed the sample database, which is just a person's database, a list of people, and we've got 4 documents in it. So if we go in here, we have a look at this. We've got John, Veronique, I don't know that one, either. And if we click on John's, we see he's got first name, John, and age, and we've got an ID. It's got some other fields like the underscore ones. They're generated by Cosmos DB. You can ignore those. We don't interest in those. We're interested in those first 3 fields. We haven't actually created a partition on this Cosmos DB database. We could do. The idea of partitions is to improve performance. I think we saw, again, creating partitions when we're exporting to Azure Synapse, maybe by month or year. I think those were the options. The idea of partitions is you separate them out and it makes it easier for reporting. So it's quite simple to go create, and you've got this in here, and you can just go in. Here's my Azure. I can go into my Cosmos DB account that I created, and I can just go in and look at my data explorer. You go see the data, and I go see this. What I was doing here, I've got my sample DB. I've got my list of persons. I click on items, and there they are. And we'll have a look at this later. I click on Veronique. You see the data, and it's a JSON object. So it's just a JSON file, but we can query this. So you can run SQL-like queries where let's say where age, this one is greater than 30. And what do I get? No, hasn't worked. So maybe where age equals 50. Do that one. Work. No, I'm not sure why it's not working. Let's get rid of it. Yeah. So I think if I do the first name, it'll work. I'm not sure on the age why that isn't working because it's numeric. But I can do queries on it. You see, select star from C. So the items. I've got that there. I've got my query. So let's think. Okay, now I've got my database. I can even create a record, create a new record here. But it says here I've had to put in JSON. I have to write the JSON if I want to go create a new item. I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to do it more easily in the Power Platform. So what's our first option? And our first option is going to be using the connector. There is an Azure Cosmos DB connector in the Power Platform. The connector has no triggers. So there's no triggers on this connector, but there are several actions: ability to create or update documents, delete documents, update documents. Also, there's get all documents. So that's like a query. There's query documents as well. Query documents v5 at the bottom there, and also running some stored procedures. Now there's no triggers. Now the thing is, if I want to use a Cosmos DB database with the Power Platform connector, the IDs must be GUIDs. Sorry, Victor, I've already done that bit. So it's in the slide deck, and I'm actually going to post, while I'm here, I'm going to post the links for everything. The links to the slides are up and ready, so you can go see those slides. I posted a link in the chat, as well as my contact details. So the IDs must be GUIDs. So that if you got a database which doesn't have like GUIDs for your IDs, you're not going to be able to use the connectors. Also, the connector doesn't work with Canvas apps. It only works with Power Automate. But the way I generally do things in Power Apps anyway, or Canvas apps especially, is I tend to use Power Automate flows to read and write data when I write apps. And that just follows into here. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go in, and I'm going to, first of all, create a flow that I'm going to call from a Canvas app to go get my data. So let's have a look at this first. So here's my flow. I'm going to start it off with an instant trigger, which is the Power Apps trigger. And all I'm going to do here is I'm just doing that get all documents. And let's just go in and have a quick look at this, and I'll come back to it. So I'm going to go to my flow, and I've got this flow here called read all. I've called it. Let's have a look at this. So right now, I'm keeping this fairly simple. I've got my Power Apps. Just going to trigger it, Power Apps trigger, and then I'm just calling the get all documents. And here, what I've done is I've already created a connection. So when I first set up here, I'll just show what you do. You create a new connection. When you create a connection to Cosmos DB, it's going to ask you for a name, and then it's typically going to ask you for an ID and an account ID or URL and a key. Everything in Azure is around some sort of identifier and a key. So I need to go over to my Dataverse, into my Cosmos DB account, and if I go to keys, where are your keys? Very quickly, there are my keys, and I grab those keys. And I read write keys and read only keys. So I'm going to, oh, maybe that's why I got an issue. So I grab the keys and I paste them into my flow. And that connects. Oh, no, don't want to do that. Cancel that. So I've already connected up. So I connect up, then I choose my database, and then I choose my collection. So I'm just going to go back to my Dataverse. I'm just going back and look at the Data Explorer. I have a database, and then I have a collection. So collection is equivalent to a table. And then my items are the documents or records in that table. So I'm going to select the sample DB and the person's collection. Okay. We haven't got a partition up, so I don't need to set up a partition key. So I'm just going to retrieve all partitions. And then I actually felt, I don't know if any of you've done this, I need to return a list of data back. I need to return an array. And if you just use the Power Apps response, it can't take an array. So I use the standard HTTP response, and I've just passed back, actually that, yeah. So I've just passed back, and you have to go set up, and I get the JSON that it returns back. And I just paste that in, and we set it up this way. I've actually got a link on how to do this later on if you've never done this. But I've effectively built a little flow that does this. And in my app, let's go into my where my app is. So I've built a Canvas app already. Let's go into it. Where's my Canvas app? Yeah. And while that's just loading up, I also built another flow. Let's just get out of here while I'm demoing. You don't want to look at me while I'm doing this. I'm in the way. I built another flow to create a document. So to create a record. So I just, again, Power Apps. And what I do is I tend to use variables or compose just to get the variables in a nice way. And then all I'm doing is I'm using the create document. I'm telling it to use my same connection, use the sample DB, the person's collection. I'm just saying pass in 3 values. And it also handles upsert. It does upsert or insert. So it'll either do an insert or an update, depending if the ID record already exists. So I said, yeah, do an upsert rather than just say do a straight create every time, but do an insert or an update, depending what's there. So I go do this. And so I built 2 flows, and I've just built a very simple little Canvas app. So here's my first Canvas, first page, whereas I've got a gallery here on the left. And when I click on get all, it's going to go run that flow for me and return the list into a collection. And I'm just going to display that collection. So let me just go run it. Let's run the flow. I click on get all. It's going to go off, run my flow. It's going to query off to Cosmos DB and return my data. And there I have my 4 documents with John, Veronique, and the other one, and Eva. So that's my document. I've also got another flow here. Another button here. If I click on this, it's going to run my other flow. It's going to pass in these 3 fields. So I've generated a unique GUI in here. I can put let's run this and put something in. Let's run this flow again. So I can put Julian. And my father always said he was 21. He never got old. He was Peter Pan, my father. So I'll do the same. So I'm going to do that, and it's saved. I got no error. If I just click on get all again, we should retrieve the back data. And yes, there I am. I've saved the data. Let me go into Dataverse. So go to let's query it. There I am. I'm in my data, and it saved my data there easily. So that's a nice way for me to read and access my Dataverse data. So scenarios, let me just talk about one scenario where I actually have used it, Victor. I do a lot of work with IoT, and I don't want to store all the IoT telemetry in Dataverse. A, it's going to be slow, and B, it's going to be expensive because I'm going to use my storage capacity up. So I'm going to store it in Cosmos DB. And then what I've done is I've used and I do a lot of embedded Canvas apps and model-driven apps. That's not how I do things. So because I can't retrieve, I can't call this flow directly from display this data directly in with this method in my model-driven app, in my field service application. I will use a Canvas app, which uses this exact method. So it's an embedded Canvas app inside my model app. So I pick a device and go get all the telemetry for that device. If anybody here does Dynamics 365 field service, the out-the-box functionality uses, you have to put your data into Power BI in Azure SQL Server, then do it. That's the standard out of the box. No, there are some limits. I think the file's 2 megabytes, but 2 megabytes is a lot when you're talking JSON data. But you typically don't want to be retrieving that much. So I don't think there's a record limit. It's the size of the object. I'm going to come on to a different way of doing it in a minute anyway. So we got this way. So this is the first way. We can use the connector. I can retrieve, I can create, and I can update, and I can delete documents directly in. And the way I would do it if I'm doing a Canvas app is I'll be doing exactly what I've done here. Because to be honest, even for a lot of things, I like my apps to be nice and simple. And I've put all the complexity and logic and data interaction in my flows, unless it's very simple gallery lists. I don't like my app makers having to create complex patch statements. I want my app to do that, and then I can change where it's stored. I like to create component-based development, but that's me. So I do a lot of this method where I'm doing these flows. We can actually go in here and have a look what it did. If we just refresh it, look at all runs. Yeah, we just did that a couple of minutes ago. We can go see the data, and I love this because I go inspect it. Yes, it's a premium. Let's go have it. Let's go edit it. Let's go add it in. I'm pretty sure most of the Azure services are premium. So where are you? All right. Let me just search for Cosmos. So I think that'll actually just get it. Yeah. So yeah, it comes with it's in premium. Yeah. Yeah. The Azure SQL's premium as well. Most of the Azure services are premium connectors. So that's the first option. Yeah. So where are the next option? Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, Cosmos DB is super fast. I mean, huge. All right. So let's create a document. The other option we have is using virtual tables. I don't know if anybody's used virtual tables. They're a much misunderstood and underused feature. The idea of virtual tables is you create a table in Dataverse and then you connect it to an external data store. And essentially, to your applications, the data looks like it's in Dataverse. It's just to take another table to an application. But when you go retrieve it, Dataverse goes off and connects to another data store, retrieves it back. And we have an Azure Cosmos DB SQL API data provider. So we have the ability to create a virtual table that connects to a Cosmos DB collection. Now, to install it, we have to install the Azure Cosmos DB for Document DB API data provider from AppSource. And that's what it looks like. You can click Get It Now. And then we have to go set it up. So you first of all have to go and install it. And once you've installed it, if you go into your Power Platform Admin Center, it gets installed. You go to Resources, Dynamics Apps. Actually, no, you have to go into your environments. And I've got a number of environments here. I'm going to come to that at the end, my recommend anyway, because there's some issues which I'll come to in a minute. So I go to my environment, I then go to my Dynamics apps, and you'll see it installed here. So it's installed. Yeah, I know it's not very. But then most of the things in AppSource have hardly got any clicks. For me, all the stars are meaningless. Most ones that for individual companies are ones they've done themselves. All right, so we do this, and just another thing, to actually set it all up, again, you can only do this with tables that have GUIDs for API for IDs, and we're going to set all this up inside the classic Solution Explorer. It hasn't made itself into the Maker portal yet, so we have to go off into Classic. And the first thing you have to do is go create a data source or data. So you go. Oh, actually, no, this is that's the installation process. I've obviously switched my slides around. So when you go to install it off AppSource, you pick your environment you install it into. So you do that. It's quite a quick installation. It only takes about 5 or 10 minutes and it's ready. I then have to go and create a data source. So you go in. So everybody else lost audio? Everybody else still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sally, it's you, not everybody else. Okay, so you have to go into you have to go into the old classic administration, go into administration data source and create a new one. You have to pick the Azure Cosmos DB data provider. Okay, and when you do that, you effectively have to do what we did for the flow connection. We have to give it our key and our URL, so the name, mine's Dataverse Summit documents. Yeah, and I put my key and I say which collection I'm using. Now this is a bit confusing, because it says, oh, collection name. My collection's name is called person, because my person database. It's actually, it's badly named. It's the actual database name, not your collection name, which is my table. Person is my collection stroke table. Okay, so we create this collection. So I build this one up. So you only need to do this one. Now, the only thing is, I need to create a data source for every single table, effectively, for every single collection. So if I had 3 collections in my Cosmos DB, I'd actually need to create 3 separate data sources. That is a bit annoying. Maybe I know if you've got different collections, each one. And then what I do is I create a virtual table. So I have to do this in the classic portal. So I click this virtual entity in the top right. So you check that box. You can't do this after you've created a table. You then get to select your data source, so the one I've created. So I create that data source, my Dataverse Summit data source, which points to my Cosmos DB database. And I give it a name. Then you see that I've got these 2 other fields come in. I get external name and external collection name. So typically it's person and persons. So I'm doing the same thing. This name I'm creating in my database is person with persons. And I'm going to do the same because this is what it is in Cosmos DB, and it's persons. And I've got this virtual entity, my data source chosen. Now there's one other thing that isn't documented. After you created the database, actually one other thing. The primary field tab, make sure you set that. Don't just take it as name, because unless you have a name field, a column called name on your Cosmos DB database, you're going to get an error. So it should be named after one of your fields on there. So I've got first name, so I went and changed it. And again, you see I've got the external name. And you have to do it before you hit create, because you can't edit this afterwards. As I found out because I missed it, and why am I erroring? And it's because I've forgotten to do this, and I always forget to do this because you have to go to the tab and select it. Then the next thing I need to do is, after I've saved it, I need to then go and edit the ID field and set this. This will be blank. So this again, my field, my column name or my tag name inside my document, which is the ID, minus ID. So I'll just go back to my Cosmos DB so you can see the data. I've got first name, age, and ID. So I need to map onto these 3 fields. So I've mapped first name as my primary field. I need to map my GUID field to ID. And I need to add a new column for age. So that's what I do next. So I create a new field. And when you create a new column on a virtual table, again, it forces you to, the external name field comes up there. So that's what it is age. Now, you may have not noticed, but I don't get other fields that you normally get on the Dataverse tables. I don't get owner. I don't get created on, created by, modified by. I don't get any of those fields. I've only got, if you actually have a look at this table, I've only got 3 fields. And actually, this is what I've done on the next slide. I've just shown it. I've gone into my Maker portal. I'm just going to have a look at the data. Let's just start to show you that now. So I'll go into my Power Apps. Let's close out of that. Why haven't I got? No, let me just go straight to the Maker portal so I don't have to close out the app. So I need to get back into it later. So I go to my tables. So I go here to my table. You see, these are the only columns I have. I'll see all columns. There's only those 3 columns, none of the others. And I go to my data. Let's have a look. I can see even my records there. So I can see the data there. Show all columns. Okay. I can see my GUID. So that's there. So we can use this. It's quite, in a matter of seconds, I've got this. And I can easily just go and create a model-driven app. It's just add the table. I've got my model-driven app. Now, one thing you need to notice here, there's no create. There's no add new. This connector, this virtual table provider only supports read. Okay. At the moment, it is still in preview notionally. So you really should potentially use it. The virtual API connectors. It's been in preview for must be 3 years now. And we'll talk about what to do. So right now, for this, it's good for doing reads. So I've used it to show IoT telemetry data inside an app. And let's just have a look at my Canvas app, because I actually got another page. Let me go to this other screen. So this screen here is just, rather than using the flow, I'm actually just using I've connected to that table. So I've connected to that my virtual table. So this is my virtual table, and this gallery here just goes to my persons. It goes to show the all persons view. So let's run this. Let's go back to let's just run it up. Go to that screen. So here's my data. It's showing me there, and I don't need to press a flow to go retrieve it, because it's just accessing the data natively. Yeah, must be one of the longest. You're right. And and I just want to show you. I'm going to try and create a new record. So I'm going to create Keith. I'm not sure. Sorry, Keith, that's really name right, not that age. But if I click on this, I'm trying to do just a form submit, and I get an error because it doesn't allow me to create. And I was expecting to get that error. If I look at that, it's just doing a form submit to create a new record, and it's not worked, which I expected, because you can't. It's read only. So what do we do? Well, for me, a lot of the time I'm just displaying data, so it isn't a problem for me right now. But I can see scenarios where I need to write back, and again, I can use I can call to a Power Automate flow to do it. If I want to do this, I mean, yes, I've got my data natively inside my model-driven app, so this is just accessing the data directly. It says and it says read only. It says I've only got read only access in my model-driven apps. This is in my tables, showing my virtual tables. So yes, Danish, I'm coming to this now. This is the current state of play. So this is what we have. Possibly, I don't know, George, on that last one about on-premise. So we have a number of different virtual table providers. Effectively, what I've shown you is the Cosmos DB one. Okay, I've shown you that. We've had the OData one for a while, and the OData one essentially allows you to do create, read, and update, update and delete operations as well. Now, I think it's about January this year, Microsoft quietly released the fact that we can create. The other thing we've got is the ability to create a custom connector, a custom table provider where we write our own code, and you go register. There's two things you have to do. You go in, you write your plugin code essentially for supporting create, read, and update, which eventually you're going to go out and connect to those external sources and do the data. And you have to use the plugin registration tool to set that. So I think that's what your option are. You'd have if you wanted to write to Cosmos DB, you're going to have to write your own custom table provider and write the code. There is samples available for you. There is also a new thing called the virtual connector. This I think is the future. So although you can create custom connectors, we've got this new thing called virtual connectors. Again, it's something you install in SQL from AppSource, and this again is in preview only, and it only supports SQL Server. So what you can do is do this, and it allows you to connect in to a SQL Server database. So you after you've installed it, let's see if I think I did install it on here. What you do is, instead of going and creating a virtual connection, we go into Power Apps. I go to Connections. I click on Add New Connection, and we have a connection reference. I think it should be there. Is it gone? It should be in here. I don't know where did I install it? Install. Yeah, I've got the virtual connector provider, but it's not appearing. I should be able to click in here, create a new connection, and then I can connect to a SQL Server. I'm pretty sure it's only Azure SQL right now, so I don't think it's on premise. To answer your question, but what it does, it allows you to connect, and that allows you to read and write from a SQL database. So I think at some point, I actually think they're going to have this virtual connectors as being the way to do it. We'll probably get rid of the existing Cosmos DB virtual data provider, and everything will be done through this method where you're able to do this. Yeah, I know it should, yeah, it should be built in. It's because it's in preview. It's a preview option at the moment, so you have to go away and do it. It's not supported as a preview, but for me, this is the right way to do it. The other thing that's really cool, which is new or newish, is say I've got some, I build a virtual table provider and connect it to an external table. I can then create some, essentially, can I trigger a flow off it? The answer is no, but the answer used to be no. But what I can do is I can create a virtual table metadata. And what you do is you go say, select your table and then say, I want to enable it. And essentially it puts this into the event pipeline. So what you get is a number of messages in the event pipeline. You say, okay, for this table, has a new record been, has a new document been created in my, or a new record been created in my SQL server that I've connected to on my virtual table, and I can trigger a flow off it. Essentially bring everything into Dataverse. So this is where we're going, just to whet your appetite on this. For me, this is quite exciting. I wanted to talk about Cosmos DB, but I ended up thinking I should really talk more about this. But I know I wasn't going to have enough time overall to really go into showing this off. But it's in preview. There's a lot of information on docs for it, and I know some people have picked up on it. I know a number of people have blogged on it, creating the custom data providers. But also have a look at this virtual table metadata as well, a way of triggering things in. So you can even write plugins off external data if you want to. So what I'm trying to show you, Cosmos DB, I think we can't avoid. It's going to become one of those data stores that we're going to need to interact with in the Power Platform. And we have a couple of options right now. We can use the connector through Power Automate, or we could use the virtual table. But the virtual table is limited, it's read-only right now. If I want to, so I might have to use a mixture of techniques. So hopefully that answers your question about somebody else. Which one would I recommend? I think it depends what you want to do. I think I use Cosmos DB for any volume data that I don't, that's just going to blow my database storage away. So IoT telemetry, maybe point of sale transactions, those sort of things. Because I also work with other Azure data stores where I'm building solutions. So my data is going to be available in Azure, and Cosmos DB is where it's really the choice. It's easier and cheaper to use Cosmos DB than it is SQL Server. And so many of the other Azure services understand how to use it, including things like Azure Synapse Analytics. Yeah, the external events for me is really exciting. I think it just opens everything up, making Dataverse the center of your solution. Rather than having to build integrations out to things, I can pull everything into one place. So I think that's why I wanted to sort of get at. So, okay, I think it's going to be think how long it's taken the Cosmos API data provider to get out of preview. I think we're going to be in preview for a little while longer. And I think they've only just done SQL. I think we're going to be looking at maybe later this year, I hope, but for more. But I don't think it's going to be GA until next year. But we'll see. But I can see so many times I've built something where I can solve so many issues. Okay, so thank you very much for your time. Any questions? I put the links to my slides in the chat. I'll just put it up in again. So if anybody missed it, they can go get the slides. There will be a blog post being published in 6 minutes time automatically with these links in as well. So do we have any questions? Can you have a calculator column in virtual table? No. No roll-up fields. There are a number of limitations. What I've actually got in here is I've got some links to some resources which take you into. These will actually have, I think if you go into these for the second one, that'll tell you some of the restrictions, the provider and that. And that's how I did that return back with the return the array back. I got some other things on that. This is the new virtual tables and the view that connector. The last thing I just talked about, the new connector and creating that with tables. So no, you can't. And I think I can see it happening, Jesse. I would hope so, but right now it's very, very basic. But hopefully we will do. But I think it's very exciting for us. The other thing you got to worry about is security, because we don't have the concept of owner on the record. So you need to handle how I'm going to show certain sets of records to certain users, that sort of thing. So hopefully this will give you an overview. Hopefully you'll think about maybe when somebody says they're using data Cosmos to me, we know we can get the data. That's what I wanted at least then. if somebody says, okay, you want to store data, Dataverse isn't the right place. Because things like emails, for instance, why are emails stored in relational databases? I look at most of my customers, the vast majority of my data is activities. This pushes my Dataverse storage right up. I want to pull that out, and I'm going to do this and stick it in, say, I actually already do. I've already pulled the attachments out, put those in blob storage. But the email bodies themselves, they're like, I've got tens of gigabytes of just email bodies. Okay. So no, you can't extend this one. You can't extend it. You'd have to build it from scratch, your own. But to be honest, it's not difficult. Cosmos DB API is relatively straightforward. So I don't think it'd be too difficult. I mean, there's loads of samples. I mean, reading and writing, there's especially .NET and Azure support for Cosmos DB. Microsoft do an awful lot where you can actually use Cosmos DB with .NET, with Python, with Node.js. They've all got supported SDKs for it. So it's really easy to interact with. Even things like creating tables, creating containers, you can do all that in code as well. It supports everything. Okay. So if there aren't any questions, I'm going to say any more questions, I'm going to say thank you and let the next speaker come on and tell us about, I can't remember. I did actually look it up beforehand, but I've forgotten. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Julian. Hello. Okay, I think I'm getting some feedback. Awesome, I'm back. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Julian. And a reminder to everyone to use the discount code Powerthon if you want the 35% discount this week and next week for all those books we've listed below. So once again, thank you, Julian. That was very, I mean, to be honest, I was really blown away by that one. That's really exciting. It'll be really exploring the art of the possible there, and it's really going to change the way we build solutions moving forward. So without further ado, there is